Hi everyone, welcome back to Ask Amy. It feels like it's been a long time since I've been here for an Ask Amy with you, so I'm really excited to be back and yeah, really looking forward to it. So I have a question here today from Gail, and it's a funny thing because I read this question and I thought, I know I've addressed that. I know I have. But I asked Gail and she said, I haven't, you didn't tell me. And whenever I address someone's question, I always send them the recording right away. So there was no record of that. I didn't see it on my YouTube channel. So well, maybe I addressed one that's similar because a lot of them are similar. So if you've heard it before, I don't know, let me know. We'll just do it again. But it's a great question. So I'm really happy to address it, even if I have already. So Gail says, with respect to feeling our feelings, how do we know if the strong feelings that may emerge in response to a stimulus is actually responding to that stimulus or merely an old repressed feeling coming up to be healed? Then she clarifies, to give this question a bit of context, so kind of listen to this part. I grew up in an alcoholic home with an abusive father and had many abusive relationships since then. I'm now in a healthy place, but still find myself afraid of men. I've learned to feel the feelings, but could you give guidance on how to know when the feelings are old or when they're present to the situation? So when they're relevant to the situation that she's in. I think it's an excellent question, Gail, and I think it's so common. I mean, in our own ways, we have stuff that troubles us, and we come up with these fears, and we have this stuff from the past, and then we kind of see through it, and maybe life changes. Like in your case, you're not in an abusive relationship. You've seen around a lot of that. It sounds like you kind of feel like you can trust yourself and know what to do in life in a lot of ways. But then when you get around something that kind of triggers that in your mind, it brings up a lot of that old stuff, and it can be really confusing. I mean, it really makes sense to question, like, how much of this is old, and what if it's about now? Like, what if I'm with someone who's unsafe now? How will I know that? So first, let me say, I think it's enough and excellent to see that there's a lot of old stuff that will still come up right now today that has nothing to do with right now today. Stop. Like, just that period. That's kind of enough, because what that starts to do is, and you're clearly familiar with this, Gail, but it's like it starts to just open up to us the fact that, oh, when I start to feel worried and all this old stuff, and it's repetitive, and I've heard it before and I've been hearing it for years, and it might come up now and attach itself to the person in front of you in a slightly different way, but I bet you'll recognize it. I bet you'll recognize it as that same old repetitive, old familiar fear. Just seeing, oh my gosh, that's still here. That just shows up at times. And that's what that is. It's just that old thing from the past, right? That's showing up right now today. Just seeing that is huge, because what it does is it kind of gives us a pause. It creates a pause in you. I'm not saying you have to do this, Gail. I'm not telling you pause and manage this and think about that. None of that. This is going to start to kind of sort itself out for you. It'll apply itself for you. But what you can start to see is that, as we know, oh, this is a bunch of old stuff coming up, naturally there's a pause in that, because it's old stuff coming up. It's not about that guy in front of you necessarily. You're at least a little bit suspicious of it, and that's gigantic. One little ounce of suspicion slows the whole thing down. And so the more you kind of have a feel for that, and again, I'm not suggesting you analyze this to death or write down what my old feelings feel like or anything like that, but you know what it feels like. It's repetitive. That's how a mind works. It's repetitive. It's the same stuff over and over again. It'll use the same words. It'll use the same memories. It'll use the same feelings. Anything that's kind of old and canned and feels like it, you start to see, okay, that's that. And then there's a natural pause in that because you're not full in it. You're onto it. You're onto it. There's a little bit of suspicion there. So there tends to be a natural slowing down, a natural pause. And then you're in the moment. And I don't mean and then as if before you totally weren't, but like you see it, there's a slowing down, a big flood of fear around this person in front of you. But then it's like, oh, I know that's the old stuff. Now let's see what's here, right now. And in that quiet, that's beyond all that old conditioned fear, that's where something's going to come up and show you about the person you're in front of in this very moment. That's where you're going to hear that from. It's almost, and don't take this literally, but it's almost as if it comes from a different source. This is the source of the conditioned fear that says run, not safe, or whatever it says and sounds and feels like for you. That's has a very familiar feeling and smell and texture and all of that. It's been happening for years. And then there's something else that's relevant to now, that'll guide you now. And it might not be a voice, it might not be words, it might be more action. And it's not always easy to tell. It's an excellent question. I really get where you are with this, Gail, and I think we all are in various ways. But it might not be that, it's not always crystal clear, but it almost is going to feel like it's coming from a different source. The image, and I've used this before, but the image that keeps coming to mind is like you go up to the cabin. Maybe you haven't been to the cabin all winter, and you go up in the spring to visit the cabin, right? No one's been there in months, and you turn the water on, and it kind of sputters for a while, right? Kind of takes a minute to get going. It sputters. Maybe it's kind of brown. It's not the best water. You don't want to turn that tap on and instantly stick your cup under it. You want to turn it on and give it a minute, because it needs a minute to get to the freshness. It needs to get all that junk out in the beginning, and then it kind of gets to its freshness. Then you can see. You wouldn't go to the cabin, instantly turn the water on, and then make a judgment about the quality of the water at the cabin. You'd let it run for a minute. Then you can make a judgment. Oh, it looks okay. Oh, no, it doesn't look okay. But you let it run for a minute. And that's kind of, for whatever reason, reading your question, Gail, that kept coming to mind here. It's kind of like that. It's like it gets turned on, your tap gets turned on, you see a man in front of you, brings up all this canned old fear. You kind of sense the familiarity in that, but you kind of just let it run a minute. And then something, maybe feeling like a little bit different from a different source, informs you about that person in that moment. It's really cool how we work like that. And again, this goes so far beyond abusive past and not trusting men. This is with all of us of so many things where we have so much conditioned fear or thinking around certain things, and we don't know what to trust, what's old and what's new, what's old and what's fresh. Well, if we look at it like that, you really can get a feel for what's old and what's fresh. And don't take that first judgment, that first little bit of whatever's coming out of that faucet. Give that a minute and then see what shows up, and just kind of feel your way through it. I think you're probably much better at this than you think you are, Gail. We probably all are. Because if we can see that we have all this old canned stuff that comes up, it's like you at least know to be suspicious of what is initially there. And don't worry about, well, is this going to make me not safe? Like, what if somebody's danger and I'm thinking, oh, that's probably just my old fear. I'll just trust this person. I don't think it works like that. Wisdom comes through and shows us things. I mean, for sure, we miss signals. We don't hear it. We make choices that end up not being the best. But I don't know. I'm not worried about it. I think if anything, you're overly safe, probably not less safe than you need to be, so you'll know. But just keep seeing it like that and see if you can't start to kind of feel the difference between some kind of like wisdom, common sense, just a feeling about what's right here, right now, versus the old stuff. I bet you they start to part and kind of go into their own camps, and they become much more distinct from each other in your experience anyway, to where you get better and better at being able to tell what's what. So thank you for this question, Gail. It's an excellent question. As I started talking, maybe I didn't answer it before. I still don't know, but if you guys have heard it before, you hear it again, and I'm sure I probably said something different. But thank you, Gail. Excellent question. And again, for everyone, this applies to whatever we have our old thinking around. So it applies to pretty much everything. So thanks, guys, for being here. Great to see so many people on watching live, and I'm happy to be back. It's been a couple weeks, but thanks for being here, and I'll see you next Monday. Send me your questions. AskAmy at thelittleschoolofbigchange.com. I still have a bank of questions, but please send them, because I love to have a nice, healthy bank of questions to choose from. Have a great week.